the Tuesday, October 22nd, 2024 meeting of the Planning Commission. Could we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Kristen, will you do the roll call?
Yes. Commissioner Bartis.
Here.
Commissioner Dolan indicated she would be absent. Chair Kempner.
Here.
Commissioner Stapp.
Here.
Commissioner Hamame also indicated she would be absent. Commissioner Arnsman.
Here.
And Commissioner Woods.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Would anyone like to make a motion to excuse the two commissioners that are not here?
I'll make a motion to excuse the two commissioners that are not present at today's meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Perfect, they're excused. Approval of the agenda. Do I have any motions?
Motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. Approval of the minutes of September 24th, 2024. Any changes or motions?
Motion to approve minutes from September 24th. Support.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. Communications. Kristen, do we have anything?
Just that there are 2 copies of the Citizen Planner magazine.
Thank you. Citizens' comments. Seeing no one here, I'll move on. Discussion of the draft zoning ordinance.
So I will let Michelle Marin from Carlisle Wortman go over most of this. This is about a 95% draft for you guys now. This is the draft that we will roll out to the public for public engagement beginning this weekend at the Monster Mash Block Party, and it will be online as well. Comments can be sent to planning@berkleymi.gov for anyone watching. And then there's always the ability to stop by and talk to us here in the office, and also to call me or Kim Anderson, our zoning administrator, as well. I will let Michelle take it from here.
Sure, thank you. So, as some of you know, this is a culmination of many, many months, over a year of work with the steering committee, as well as a lot of public engagement. We do have several changes that were included in a memo that I believe you received last week. So for the purposes of this discussion, we're interested in knowing any general concerns or thoughts that you might have. We can do tweaks, deletions, we can talk through specific regulations that don't seem to make sense, or if there's any clarifying questions about how this will apply, we can certainly talk about those. Should I go through like the broad changes from, or have you all been keeping up? I mean, you know, I'm kind of disconnected from here, but so have you all been keeping up with?
Can I jump in for a
Yeah,
second?
absolutely.
Okay. So everyone had access to this in the Google Drive over the past couple years. Chair Kempner and Commissioner Hamame were very involved because they were part of the zoning ordinance steering.
Living it.
which I so appreciate, because that group did spend a lot of time going through this section by section. So as Michelle said, she can point out some of the main changes. Some of those were highlighted in the memo that was provided along with the packet. We're not asking for all of your comments tonight, but we are asking for them by November 8th, because the plan is to hopefully bring this back to you for a formal public hearing at the November Planning Commission meeting. And if everyone remembers the steps from there on out, after that, if everything, the commission finds that they're recommending approval, it would go on to the city council, and we would go through the usual text amendment process. So however you would like Michelle to walk through things, I will say I don't think we have enough physical time to talk about every single item tonight. But if there are things that have jumped out at you that you think you would want the commission as a whole to discuss, this would be a great time. But just because you don't say it tonight does not mean it closes the door on your comment. We will take comments to me by November 8th from the Planning Commission, and then from the public for longer than that, and those should go to planning@berkeleymi.gov, not just to me, although if that's the email address that you have as mine, that's fine too. But for the commission's information, if you could have your comments to us by the 8th, and then I'll let you talk to Michelle about how you want to tackle things this evening.
I guess let me start by asking how familiar, right, because I have lived this, right, so it was nice to go through it very quickly because of Berkley, with fresh eyes, because there were some things that I saw, but I guess I'm kind of wondering how familiar y'all feel with this. And honesty is cool. Like, if you're like, no, I have not actually gone through it, then
Yeah, so for my part, we've had several workshops, which I think have kept me in the loop. And I wasn't on the committee or anything, you know, and having lived it for about 4 years now, the old one, I feel abreast of like the major things that are generally changing, like from like signs are added. I think PUD's revised. I think the site plan review process is tweaked. The duplex multifamily housing parking allowance thing. So through the several workshops, I think those highlighted probably mostly the major changes. And I think if we were all there, to me at least, that covered broadly sort of some of the major changes as I was going for, and like typos and stuff like that. I'm not going to read it for that at all at a certain point here. But like,
And
you know,
I will say for things like typos,
yeah.
Kim Anderson and I are reading it cover to cover again. So
God bless you.
I've
we-
only found one typo, and it was just a missing word.
All right,
and there's a few things like that, and
always.
you can rely on the staff people for the typos. Don't feel like you need to let us know that level of detail.
And I think the zoning map change in alignment with the FLU, because it's part of the master plan process. So I totally understand and get how now they're in alignment, and there was consolidations of the Rs, I think, at some point, based on their analysis of parcel sizes. I mean, I feel like up to speed in that sense.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm not sure if there are more issues, though, that are out there that are not, did not have consensus from the committee or the task force, whatever, I forget the name, you know,
Right.
for our discussion. Although I did see the memo. So if any of those are still open.
I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot of big outstanding stuff anymore, right?
No, or just some loose ends.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing there's a couple things that stick out to me as I'm looking at the memo. The children daycare homes or special land uses, was this not already mentioned in the zoning ordinance?
It isn't.
For the 7 to 12?
You mean in our current zoning ordinance? So our current zoning ordinance, this is a great example of why we were doing this task. Lists child daycare, I think it says center, or child daycare or something like that. It doesn't specifically call out the different categories of child daycare as it's regulated by the state, right? Because you have the family daycare home, the group child care home, and child care center. Those are the state things. These are the things we're trying to match up with in our ordinance. So in the instance of the one that came before you recently, I had to go to the city attorney and say it just says child care center as a special land use. What does that mean? Is that family daycare home? Is that child care center only? If it's just child care center, our current ordinance doesn't include things that the state says that we have to include. So this is clarifying that. And this, I think, was a point of discussion at the previous joint meeting. And that was the consensus I got from the city council and planning commission.
And then, you know, the definition of a gun shop, I know that's been
It's like
in
recent.
the news.
New development.
Yeah. Recently. Yeah, this looks good. Apologies, but what are the MEDC recommendations on flexibility? What are you referring to there? On shared uses in terms of? commercial property
So
and access?
I believe as the memo was sent to you, that was indented, right? Is that how you're
Yeah,
looking at it?
right,
It
exactly.
shouldn't have been. So that's why probably it was confusing. Yeah, I know. I just
Has
looked at
nothing
that
to
right
do-
now. I was like, why is that
Okay,
indented
that's
like
fair.
that? So it's
Yeah.
talking about shared parking use. And it's it's unrelated to the gun shop thing.
Okay.
Does that offer any
And
clarity?
the bullets below them, that is not supposed to be indented as well?
Right.
Right, okay.
I
That's-
think this is supposed to, the last sentence of the gun shop thing says the parking regulations.
Right.
They're supposed to be an enter
Yes.
for a new bullet.
I kind of thought that was bad, I just want to make sure.
Glad you asked. I spotted that right before. What? I changed my version. Like, hopefully this was just me, but I guess.
And we're gonna hold you accountable.
My name's not written there, so.
I was gonna say, what does gun shop have to do with multifamily?
Oh, hopefully nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big ticket items we're all pretty familiar with, and then I'm with Commissioner Bartas on. I wasn't digging so in depth that I was gonna read for typos and things, and there's sections that I've skipped over that I thought weren't very pertinent, but I think as a commission, the big ticket items we're pretty well versed in for the rewrite.
So what was the parking space final determination?
1.3.
1.3, that's what
Plus-
that's in there, right?
Yeah, plus one for every 10?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
one
think
for every
so.
10, I see
Yeah.
that here. Okay, two.
That's the change from the .85?
Well, that was
Well,
the
it's a
two.
change from our 2, because
Yeah.
that's what we currently are.
0.85 was the
Like
expert recommendation, but the
Okay.
2 was what we we had.
And I guess for my clarity as a reference, residential housing is not going to allow duplex as a use, right? That was determined. Is that correct?
In the single-family residential zoning
single-family
district,
residential.
correct.
Okay. And then we are allowing ADUs. That was
Yes.
like a kind of a major-ish addition, like
With
whether
specific-
actually they're like feasibly possible in most properties, but it was an added.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one whole workshop, I remember. Yeah, right. Okay.
And then I'm going to skip to you because I have a list.
Oh, good.
Do you have any thoughts before I get to my? Okay. One of the things, and some of it is looking with new eyes, right? So we don't have a huge amount of area that we've labeled for two-family homes, right? It's just that little area that already has it. But in those design standards for it, it says like only one door, only one entrance and sidewalk, which makes many of those non-conforming. So I don't know if we want to relook at that, because a lot of those have 2 doors already and 2 sidewalks already. And if that's our like main area, they're allowed in some multifamily, but we're going to make all of those spaces non-conforming.
Okay, I think the rationale behind that was, we want to ensure that the design standards like reflect new development, right? So I guess my question for you would be, in making those existing duplexes non-conforming, what is the concern for how they can or cannot expand upon that use?
Well, if they're non-conforming, how much can they do? As far as, if they wanted to add on to it, if they wanted to,
So enlarge the duplex, keep it a duplex.
yeah.
Then they would be bound by the dimensional regulations and not the design standards.
Okay.
So it would effectively just be like any other non-conforming building absent specific design standards. Because unless they wanted to relocate one of the doors, then it wouldn't really come into play.
So if like somebody came in and bought a duplex and decided, you know what, I'd rather this be 3 bedrooms on each side, so I'm going to build a second story, they would still be able to build said second story, keeping the 2 different entrances, 2 different sidewalks.
Yeah, because they're not enhancing that nonconformity. and presumably they're still complying with all the other dimensional regulations. So with design standards becoming more non-conforming, you'd focus on the specific design feature that is being altered.
Okay,
So it wouldn't really come into play.
okay.
But good catch.
Thank you. So one of the other things that struck me as I was looking through, everything that backs up to residential, right, which is everything, is that the rear setbacks vary widely. So it's, in one area, it is 10 feet, whether you are 2 stories or 4 stories. And another space, it's 15, unless you're above 30, and then it's 30. In one area, it was like 15 for a rear side back, or for a rear setback if you were non-residential. If you were institutional, it was 30. If it was something else, it was 25. They're just like, I can't even understand where it is. I liked the 15 and 30 by and large because it seems to have a 48-foot tall building 10 feet away from, some of them are back to back and then you're fine, but if you're back to side, which a lot of them are, 48 feet feels really tall to only be 10 feet away. So I'm not sure if there's a reason that they vary so widely or if it was like, and I like copy and paste, right? And we just kind of like didn't double check with all of these because some of them are in the same district that they're all over the place. So that's something I would like to look at again and figure out.
For sure. We'll go over those and make sure that as administered, they make sense.
Right. So 2 of my other points that I just don't think have been addressed. One of them is when on a corner lot, when the rear yard meets a side yard, it says the side yard has to have a 25-foot side yard setback.
Are we talking about single-family residential?
Yeah. And I'm still not understanding, I even have a page somewhere.
There's a graphic, right?
There was a graphic, I don't know if there's still a graphic. I feel like the graphic disappeared.
I wonder
There was a few.
if this is something that got changed.
Page 197?
Okay, on the Word doc, or they're both the same, right? Word doc,
On the
PDF?
PDF, they should be the same or close to.
Did you say 197?
I think that's what I have written here.
It's like 9.9
Let me open the
I.
or
Oh, the
Thank-
corner lot
Yeah.
provision?
sorry, opening the PDF because the
Yeah.
Word doc's all
It's-
crazy.
It's 9.9.
It keeps freezing up on me every so often. I have to-
Okay. Oh, right. Yes, there was a graphic here.
And it looks
We're
like the
talking
graphic's
about-
gone, but the wording is still there.
With the garage.
For garages.
Oh, you're right, that does still say garages.
Whenever you're in about the rear yard, the exterior side yard.
Okay, but does that still make a huge difference? Like, I guess I'm not understanding. The rear yard abuts this side yard. This exterior side yard is what we're talking about. And I'm not sure why. If it was referring to the rear, it would make sense. I don't even understand that.
Why is the rear yard? Yeah.
Dictating the side
Right,
yard.
right. Or if it was, why not 15 instead of 25?
Right.
And I think we need to add the graphic back in too.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, I understand, the difference between, the rationale between splitting them up was to have that extra cushion from the side yard setback that's only 5 feet. So, in reading this now, it makes sense to me to keep 1 10 feet and make 2 15 feet. But are you saying it would,
I mean, if it's the exterior side yard, it is the side that's facing the street, right?
Yes.
I mean, I don't know. Why does how close this is here affect how close
Wait.
this is here?
you're right,
This-
you're right. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like this was a leftover from something
This was
similar in
leftover
the
that was
current
in our old ordinance,
Yeah. I remember
and-
asking Megan a lot about this, like, I don't even know what this is saying. Like,
Right?
and I made the graphic, and she was like, that's not what it's saying. I was like, okay. So this still needs to be revisited,
Yep, we'll do
completely
that.
agree. Yeah, we'll tool around with the practicality and send it to Kristen and Kim and see, can this be administered?
And full disclosure, we might come across things like this when the ordinance is adopted and have to make some of these adjustments.
For sure. I'm just like, if I know that
Yep.
they're here right now. My other question is, and it's based on something that went to ZBA, is we have defined side yards and rear yards as if every house is a perfect square. As soon as you add that like addition in the middle, we have these two little pockets that are apparently black holes. And we still don't have a definition for those.
And you're talking about when we were talking at the ZBA about
It was an
exterior
yeah.
appliances.
Yeah.
And can they go in the black hole area or not?
Right. So what is, I mean, the black hole, we have to define it as something, right?
Anyone remember the address?
I
It's
can
okay if
get
you
that.
don't.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
cool.
can get that. Do you want me to? I can show you the situation
Okay, cool,
she's talking
yes.
about.
So it was just, instead of a square, it had like an addition here. So what they said is, this is a side
Oh,
yard.
yes. I know
Yeah,
exactly
so
what you're
what
talking
is
about.
This is the
Yes.
backyard.
So, are the graphics not showing up on this PDF at all anywhere?
No, some
There was a graphic
some
for this.
graphics were
Okay.
included.
Yeah, there was a graphic for this, but perhaps we need to include one that references that specific.
Yeah.
Property.
I mean, because I think
Yeah.
the graphic here was like a square, and this works perfectly if it's a square, but as soon as you have an addition, then we have black holes.
Yeah, yeah. We did one with a little bump out, but
Oh, okay.
yeah,
I did
that
not see
lives.
that.
That lives somewhere.
Is that a bump out of property, right? That's what, right?
Like of the house.
the house
Of the house.
itself? Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
And then there was something about reducing the transparency in the downtown specifically. If they have like a planter wall, let's see where it is. And I guess my question is, it was like if there's planter wall or public art, and specifically in our downtown core, I'm wondering, do we want to actually do that? Like, we want those to be fairly transparent. We want to see, they want to be active, right? That's the whole thing, especially with our downtown core. So I guess my bigger question is, do we actually want to have the ability to reduce the transparency in lieu of those things in that specific area? And if we do, why?
I believe there was discussion at one of the steering committee meetings about this topic, was there not, that I didn't go to?
This transparency topic in particular?
Or no?
I don't recall off the top of my
What
head, but we
section?
did have, a lot of meetings. I will say that the current ordinance requires in the downtown district 40% transparency. And I was looking at this standard, which I think is appropriate for discussion, as the takeaway I got from our last joint meeting of Planning Commission and Council was that the group was interested in promoting green building things, and this would be one way to incentivize someone to do that, so that instead of putting a window, if they wanted to put a living wall, we would reduce the transparency requirement. So I think you're asking, Chair Kempner, if that number should be higher, if we should even be willing to reduce it at all for those sorts of incentives, and that's a discussion
Yeah, I
point
guess
for the
that's my
group.
question. And specifically in that downtown area, I feel better about it outside of that, but that super walkable area, based on my, like, the training and the downtown guidelines, I mean, those are supposed to be very active areas. So you're supposed to kind of be able to see and, get that live feeling. And so I feel like if there's a green wall, if there's a planter wall, we lose some of that vibrancy of activity. But everybody else can chime in.
Do you know what section that was?
Oh,
PDF is page 100 on the
100.
PDF.
thank you, because I was like, I did not put a page on that.
So your question was the 40% is too low for special approval?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to lower it as a give for, these things that are not particularly vibrant.
Sure, I agree with you. I agree with your take on that.
Just wanna keep it at 70?
Yeah, I mean, we still have some ability, right, if like they're repurposing a building, right, and they don't have a 70% transparency, we still have the ability to waive that, yes?
I would want to, I think so, but I want to go through the ordinance and make sure, because that's exactly the situation I was thinking of, like the restaurant you guys just reviewed, where they're trying to repurpose the building, and they're improving the transparency, but they definitely weren't at 70%.
Right.
So we'll double check that and make sure for repurposing purposes that's in there. But this, I think you're talking about for newer.
I mean, I am, yes, I'm envisioning newer,
Would, outside of the downtown area?
I feel more okay with that outside of the downtown area.
It's like something on like 11 Mile or
Yeah. Or even south.
South Coolidge.
So yeah, south of Catalpa there. Maybe one day it'll be just as dense and beautiful as that little core L, but it's just not yet.
So transparency essentially means windows, 70% of the front
Right.
facade should be windows. And if you're gonna have some screening involved, like planters, that's okay up to 40%. So what you're saying is no screening involved. You would prefer not to have screening.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to dangle it as a carrot, like, hey, if you want to put screening in here instead, you don't have to put this window here. I want them to try and meet that 70% as much as possible.
So we can take out that, the reduction portion, and then we'll double check to make sure you can still reduce for redevelopment opportunities. Or reuse.
So, yeah, I don't know if I'm just being nitpicky, but transparency for me, it's like, can I see into the store? I mean, I know we're talking about windows, but should we be specific to windows? And say windows? Otherwise, if you have windows and you put up, you know, a film that you can't see, or a film on a certain part of the windows, that's not really transparent.
I mean, I would agree. I think, like, we really pushed for Aquatots to have those windows there. And it doesn't succeed as well as we wanted it to with the darkening of it.
So there is a provision in the sign ordinance, because that was one of my things with Aquatots too, that just is driving me crazy. So we did put an opaque film counts as a window sign, and I think you could cover up to 25% with window signs.
As long as they're opaque.
No, the window sign is defined as any sign, opaque film, picture, symbol, or combination thereof. And a business is allowed in the new sign ordinance up to 25% of their window can be covered with signs. So that could be a film, or it could be, you know, for sale, blah, 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 or a mural picture or something like that. But they could cover a portion of their windows. But they couldn't make the whole window with an opaque film.
So, could 70% of a facade be all glass block?
Yes, it could. Yeah, it's not just it's basically anything that lets light pass through, not necessarily us seeing through.
I mean, I don't think anyone would do that. But I would like some type of flexibility for the planning commission to address that type of design.
Like an all glass block?
Yeah. Say, like I said, I'm just thinking.
And I'm there with you in the intent, 100%. I just think we're not going to be able to anticipate every single situation.
Yeah.
So I guess do we want to see inside?
That's what I think that Chair Kempner's getting at in terms of the vibrancy, right? That you want to see things for sale and.
Right.
People in the
Interesting window displays
Restaurants and shops.
and, you know, people having a good time. So you're like, hey, I want to go in there too.
Well, then it makes me wonder about just general window treatments. If people close their blinds, are they suddenly non-compliant?
That I think gets to be too complicated.
Right, so I think there can be beauty in being a little bit vague.
All right, I'll keep going. So, let's see, what page is this? Page 90. Which I think is residential corridor. So if I wanted to put a duplex, I would need 65 feet of width to do that, which probably means I need at least 2 parcels. Is that our goal?
One moment, let me just catch up.
You're in the table, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're going by the setbacks, correct?
No, on table 6.04
I see.
C2, minimum lot width for 2-family is 65 feet.
Yeah. I mean, looking at the intent of that ordinance, or the intent of that section, that wasn't the goal. The goal was to provide a mix of different housing types in the residential corridor. So,
So we can look at that.
yes.
So the site type dimensions, wondering if there's a better way to clarify some of that. Like I looked in the gateway corridor, and it says a large type of parcel shows to be 6+ lots, and then it has a depth of like 230, but the depth of that area is only 150.
Which page are you on? Sorry.
I don't think I put my page on this.
Or just generally, you're talking about the site type?
Yeah, I mean, I think that
Yeah.
it's kind of like an across the board sort of thing. That was just the one I had finally like.
Right.
I don't think we're saying it has to be 230 feet deep in order to do this, but it almost reads that way. Like in order for this to be a large type, it needs to be, this.
So Kim and I were talking about this today because we were going through some of the bless you some of the text descriptions, and I think this is going to become a little bit of an interpretation art because, right, what happens if it's 231 and this says 230?
Right.
So
Or, I mean, a lot of those in some of that area are only like 180. But if you have 6 of them, I think that's our thought process goal, right?
So I think we were thinking that we would take the narrative description along with the typical standards provided and make a determination. Is this a small, medium, or large?
Okay.
And that was the intention for how these were crafted. And that's why it does say typical.
Right?
So it will vary.
Okay. Going up floors for affordable housing or a public plaza and all of that, we're going to do that with a special land use process?
One moment.
I didn't put a page number there either.
I don't believe that was the idea, but let me try to find where you're seeing this.
It's not in a table.
Oh, I see. Oh, the height deviations. Yeah, for all the, yes. Yes, so just, I remember this was put in very recently.
So I think the idea was that it would go through the special land use process to make sure it harmonizes with the surrounding properties, that you're getting the public hearing input, et cetera, et cetera. But if the commission feels like this should be at your discretion without that process, that's okay. We don't have to make that a special land use.
I don't love making it a special land use. Like, I feel like it's better placed, like, with our parking modification abilities, right? Where it's like, base it on this stuff, and then it's, the planning commission can,
Not waive it, but allow it.
right.
That's fine if that's what the commission feels. It seemed like when we had our joint planning commission council meeting, there was a big interest in looking at how we could help people integrate affordable housing components. So that would be a way that I think would make it less cumbersome on an applicant to do it.
Yeah. That's my thought anyways. I like the idea of doing a waive. Anybody else?
Which section? 10, somewhere?
Page 134.
Yeah.
That's where I'm seeing it.
134.
I think it's in a couple places, because I'm on page
yeah.
100.
Yeah,
If something is if something is a special land use, does it, it's not like a variance, it doesn't run with the property forever, does it? I mean, obviously, if you're building, I just feel like it also makes it weird that way, like if you've built it 4 stories.
right. And then if they change the use, what's the new, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Do we have like another option? Because it said I go up to 4, but the green roof was only 1. The affordable housing was 2, and then there was like another
Public plaza.
public plaza or public space. Is there like another option to get to that 4? I guess it seems like, well, maybe some of the other 2 or a couple, like the green roof and the public space could probably be there for throughout different uses, I guess, from like a special land use perspective. But I don't know if like the affordable housing would come and go, or if somebody ended up buying it and will we go on anymore? So
Right.
now do they have a 4-story building,
Right, exactly.
right?
Yeah.
But is there a way to like get to the 4 maybe easier, or just like allow up to 4? I guess maybe is that where the special land use comes into play?
So you're thinking or asking, is there a way to get to 4 stories without having to include all of these
Right.
combinations?
Yeah.
Not in the ordinance right now.
Okay.
Well, I mean, in many ways, in most instances, I think Woodward, there's a 3, you can go up 3 stories higher, but most of it is going from 2 to 4. And I think green roof was 1,
Green roof is 1.
and then
Public space is 1 to 2.
1 to 2.
Affordable housing is 1 to
1
2.
to 2.
And combination of the above is no more than 2.
Yeah. So,
No more than 2.
I mean, so if they gave a really nice public plaza, right, then it could go up 2 stories just on its own.
Okay. So they get 2 to begin with?
Yes, that's what would be allowed by.
Gotcha. Okay, sorry. I thought it was
zoning.
1, and then they could get up.
So
Okay.
so for the 1 to 2, does that mean it's like at our discretion?
Yes.
Okay. I do
Depending on-
remember talking about this at the meeting now. I don't remember being in favor of the affordable housing part, honestly. But
You might not have
I
been.
think we
remember
voted. Yeah.
It seemed like the majority were, but
Yeah.
probably not everyone.
Yeah.
Right.
It was like the interim city manager had spoken up on it.
Yeah, there was, 1 story.
And we admittedly have a lack of affordable housing in the city.
Right, but I guess in the downtown area, is that
Well, I mean, and
a desired location?
I don't think we have that in the downtown. I think it's outside of the downtown.
I thought it was just for the downtown.
No.
So it's in Flex. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Gateway, right?
Woodward. Gateway. And downtown.
Oh, it does have the downtown too. But we can't have a bottom floor in downtown. It would have to be built above stores in downtown.
Like a bottom floor of non-residential? I don't think so.
Wait, can you say that again?
Yeah.
Main floor residential in the downtown.
Regardless of affordable, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, is it even
Correct.
allowed to be?
No,
in-
No.
it's not allowed.
I didn't think so.
I thought there were like, it seemed complications with administering that too, but I don't remember.
With the
exactly.
affordable?
Yeah,
I mean, I think that there was some question. It feels like
not an expert.
it's been defined fairly well, like this is what it is. It's this percentage of, the mean or whatever it is. I don't have the definition right in front of me. Somebody looked it up and found a good
Yes,
definition.
the HUD definition.
Does it have to be affordable, I guess, in the downtown? Could it just be residential or to allow it up to 4? I don't know, I'm just throwing out the question, I don't know. Yeah, this one did seem a little more divided maybe, I thought.
For adding additional floor, you can add additional,
So if they're like.
can we add additional floors in the downtown that are residential?
More than 2?
After the main floor,
So you have the first floor non-residential.
right.
You have the next floor residential, let's say,
That can happen in our downtown.
as a right. Now, if you want to get above 2 stories, according to the way this is written now, you need to include a public space or a green roof or affordable housing or a combination thereof. That's the way it's currently written. So the way it's written now, you could not go up to 4 stories without including some or all or
Yeah,
of
it'd have to
those.
be a public space and a green roof if you wanted to get the 2 additional.
Well, even a
non-affordable.
impressive enough public space, you could get 2 from that.
Right, right, right.
Or a public space in an area that really needs a public space, or how, whatever it is that, we decide at that moment.
So is the concern with the number of stories or what's being given as opposed to what's being received or where it's located? What's the,
My concern is what's being received.
Okay,
Like
For-
making sure
for-
that it's worth it.
Yes,
Yes.
for the height allowance.
Gotcha.
Quite honestly, the other 2 are fine, but not.
And I guess I feel like that gives us a little more power in the waiver version than in the special land use version, right?
right. Yeah, and yeah, thinking about it, special land use is not the best process to do this.
Sorry, I still, because I wasn't part of like all the design stuff and master plan, but for the downtown areas, I guess, do we want, or do we prefer to have taller buildings? Or we prefer to have 2-story, or, I guess I'm just wondering from that perspective of
So
like-
I think if I'm remembering the downtown design guidelines and downtown master plan correctly, they were vague in their recommendations, and it talked about considering buildings up to 4 stories.
Okay.
But it left when do we consider buildings up to 4 stories for the commission and the council and the community to decide later as part of this process.
Okay.
Now, I'll say when I go into some of those older downtowns, right, I think Pontiac, right, don't think of like how vibrant everything is, but you look at some of those buildings and they're 3 stories and 4 stories. And I'm like, this is what you want for a downtown, just really active and thriving, right? Where people are living for a few floors above it. You have your like businesses below it that are, supporting all of those. It's a bonus if you have this beautiful old architecture that we probably won't see, but, I think the ideal of a downtown is that, are we going to get somebody that has an open area that they want to build 4 stories on?
Right,
Much less likely, I think.
right.
There are properties that are very potential for that in downtown.
I guess,
There are some,
Yeah.
right.
not a ton, but.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I would support 4 stories, just
Yeah.
not in lieu or not in trade for affordable housing.
Just 4 stories outright? Or just,
I guess. I mean, yeah, but that's the design. I
that's
think.
the question, I think, for the commission.
Is that what Eric said? Yeah, that's what you're asking.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So you just want 4 stories no matter what?
Up to?
I guess I'd have to look at the design guys. Yeah, if it already has that up to 4.
But I guess if you want to receive something from that.
So the idea was that, you know, we dangle these ideas, right? Like you can go up 2 more stories, but these are the things you have to, you know, give us in return.
Well, in the public space, I don't know. That seems to be very vague, based on whatever other cities are allowing or what other things are doing. Because I know, like, I think one of them was in Boston, maybe, where they had a public space, but it was like, I think something you gotta like pay for, right? It was like a public area that, you know, public, but like, so versus like maybe that little pocket park that the one multifamily.
So, a public space, the way that it's written here, you get to decide what that is. You're right, some communities might say a bike repair station and a bench is a public space. And some communities might say, no, our public space is a sizable parklet where we can host a band concert or something. I mean, and that could vary too from across decades or whatever it might be. So,
Or
And as
even in
someone who
different
tries,
locations.
and as
Yes.
somebody who does
About-
events in our downtown, we don't have any, I mean, we have to close off a street. There's no spaces that we can get people to gather, which also means there's no spaces where people are hanging out, having a coffee, or they're drink from the social district, or, you know, you have a bench here and a bench there. You don't have those great gathering spaces. And since most of that land is owned by people somewhere or another, this is the way to try and get those without the city having to try and buy that land and create that.
And if this is not going to be a special land use process, which I agree it shouldn't be, we can include some type of description of how this would be considered by the Planning Commission to provide some standards so that what's being offered reflects like the level of expectation in order to really get that height bonus.
can I throw something out there? So, just Chair Kempner just said something that kind of triggered an idea. So, in some places, we do have a little bit of extra right of way, like the parcel that, or the area that comes to mind is Robina, right? We have a little bit of space to do something as a public space there. Could this read something along the lines of development of a public space? Like, what if someone wanted to come in on an adjacent parcel, say they got enough parcels, blah, 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 and they said, I want to do 4 stories, but I don't want to take a corner of mine and make it a public space. Could I instead develop the additional right-of-way width you have on Robina and develop it into the public space that you want? And it would be in your right-of-way, but I would do all the development. Would you still give me 4 stories?
Are you talking about the public right away?
I mean, I think it's reasonable to have that option, like have it written
Yes,
that
would
they
you want the
could,
option?
you know, that they could explore. We can always go no, right? But
It's important to have the discretion, I think, for us.
and that creativity, right? Like the ability for somebody to be creative, maximize their own profit and help the city at the same time sounds like a win-win. All right, so any more thoughts on this? Are we opposed to the affordable housing part? I felt like there was some,
Yeah, I wasn't for it before as an exchange for extra. How, whether it's special land use or the other way that she's mentioning, I didn't think it's like, I don't know, they don't equate to me. So,
I agree with Commissioner Bartis. It feels like an odd correlation to say, give us this and we'll bump it up for this.
for anything or just for the affordable
For the
housing?
affordable
Yeah.
housing. It's like if you, and we're basically saying, give us the affordable housing and we'll, up you go. It's kind of an odd, it's just an odd ask to get it.
Why does it feel odd, just out of curiosity?
I don't know, it just does, I think.
for me, it's odd because I feel these other two have more benefits to the community as a
Yeah.
whole as opposed to affordable housing, where that benefits. Like, yes, I guess a mix of diverse housing is sort of beneficial, but these other ones are beneficial to the broad public, like a public
Community
space,
at large,
a community.
yeah.
Anybody can use a park, but
Yeah.
like having lower rent for somebody, I'm not sure that I would trade that for building height, per
Right.
se. So
That-
that's where I'm
yeah.
coming from.
I can appreciate where you're coming from for sure. That incentive is frequently offered just because of the development costs associated with one footprint. The height can really be a major carrot if developers would otherwise only want to develop market rate units. And there's not a lot of incentives to get developers to develop affordable units that are not directly related to the high construction costs. So that's a typical incentive that's in a lot of communities. And I guess regarding the question of how it's benefiting the community, that I guess is a more broad, like, planning discussion.
Right, right.
And I would say a national discussion too. Housing affordability is all over the place now. And this is really the only carrot we have put in the ordinance to try to address that. I think something to keep in mind that we talked about before is we did decide not to allow duplexes in single family. And one way to bring down the cost of housing is to provide more housing units. And the community said they weren't ready for that right now, to look at that, and that's fine. But I do think it's worth pointing out, if this affordable housing component goes away for multiple family and we're not allowing duplexes in neighborhoods, we're not doing a whole lot to really increase density in the community, which is one way to bring down housing costs. And then we wouldn't have anything to require multiple family affordable housing either. So it's just something to point out. I'm not saying that you have to stick with this, but we did elect not to look at density increases as part of this.
What are the
than
other
ADUs.
ways that you kind of incentivize it? I mean, this is probably not the only way that most cities incentivize it. So what are the other options?
Reducing minimum floor area is common, permitting ADUs more broadly, whether that's in different locations within the house or like overall throughout the municipality in different zoning districts. Mostly related to dimensional regulations, I would say, in terms of if it's not directly referencing like affordable housing, the way that it gets incentivized is changing the dimensional regulations. And like Kristen was saying, the use regulations, multifamily duplexes, allowing them more broadly.
And we don't have, I mean, I think it's one thing if you have a good amount of older apartments, right? Where when you build new apartments, those are very expensive. The people who go to the pricier ones go to the pricier ones. And that kind of opens up some of the lower end ones that have been there forever. We don't have much
have
of
new
any of
ones.
that, right? Like,
Yeah, there's no naturally occurring affordable housing really here. So looking to subsidize housing is like the only real option. And subsidized is just one type of affordable housing that would fall under the HUD definition there. So that bonus, it is very broad with how affordable. I know the definition for affordable housing is specific and the threshold, but how it can be applied, whether it's through vouchers, LIHTC, is much more broad. So it might, and also it doesn't say what percent has to be affordable. So that could be up to the
Right.
discretion of the planning commission as well.
Yeah. It just seems like a whole new thing to get into. That seems very complex. And because like almost I erroneously like read this and it says we would allow 1 to 2 stories. Like immediately people would think like, oh, you're going to add 2 more floors of affordable housing to a 4-story building. But that's really not the interpretation. It's like there could be like 4 units out of.
It's how you would
Yes.
interpret
Right,
that.
which this seems, I don't know, it just seems like a lot to manage. I don't know how, again, and if the building gets vacated or whatever, it seems like a lot, but, and I was for duplexes, honestly, so I had my other fights that I thought were better, ways to increase density, so.
I mean,
Well, I was just gonna say with the allowance of ADUs, wouldn't that kind of help
We did
address?
that.
It does help, but they're not going to be allowed in every situation. We heard from the community when they wanted them and when they didn't want them. I don't know how many people will take advantage of that or not, but it is one way we're trying to help with some of this.
And then I think my other question is, what are, I think we're talking about downtown development, right? for raising stories, right?
Downtown,
Multiple.
Gateway,
Gateway.
Flex.
So we
And
want to
Woodward.
ensure that whatever's developed there has the highest and best use according to our development goals and provides a sustaining type of economic development.
Definitely.
Now, does affordable housing, does that contribute to economic development in such a way for specifically downtown commerce? Or should we be shooting for, something different or some type of affordable housing option that's not on a major gateway corridor?
Probably with the current market rates, it seems like the developments we saw are not worried about that in this area, right? They're like places sell out, they're gonna build at market rates. And they're not concerned about not filling their buildings. And so affordable I don't know, like if it's just a way to get more apartments in by having that little carrot, is that also the right thing to do?
Well, more people in the downtown does help,
Right.
because it's more people on the streets, more people going to businesses, et cetera, et cetera. It's also people who maybe work in the service sector and want to live near where they work. So it helps with bringing those service employees to the areas where they work as well.
And it's not, and I know that there are people who get very nervous when we hear affordable housing. We aren't, we're talking about,
Teachers, nurses, police officers.
right? And,
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a sprinkling of them. It's not like, hey, you have to, if you're going to have 2 stories, they all have to be affordable housing. It's like going to be some percentage of them to mix in. And
you have that discretion based on what the need is, what's being offered, like what's happening with the community over time.
Does staff currently manage affordable housing in any way now?
No, we don't, but I do think we have the capacity to handle this,
Okay.
especially because I think it'd be a trickle in, not like a deluge.
Yeah.
I think one of the only other major ways cities address affordable housing is with tax breaks, right? And so this would be a way of doing it without the city's pocketbooks being affected by it.
You don't have to create a TIF district or anything special.
So with the ultimate goal to increase density, because I think that's to me where this ultimately comes from, I also would throw in there like reducing the parking is also a way to increase, because
Oh, you
that's
want
like
to talk about parking?
that's like a major. No, like I'm just sort of thinking about like that
Always go back
drop
there.
from 2 to 1.3 really allows a developer to develop at market rate a lot more units, which increasing density to me is the ultimate goal. And
I mean, so for me,
no duplexes are not on there. Like more multifamily units with less required parking will just naturally increase density, I think. Hopefully, is that like I think that should be by math, I think the way it would work.
So for me, density is part of it, but it's also just the like basic societal human good. Can your teacher come in here and rent an apartment at the Ivy on her teacher salary?
Probably not.
Probably not. And so if we can encourage some of those people who work here to also be able to live here in a way where that they can afford, I think that's a good thing. I mean, I think that benefits the whole city in a big way. In a small, trickly way, right? Like, because these aren't going to be like 2,500 affordable units show up in probably any decade.
Right, but the only battle ultimately that will end up potentially happening with this is, even with the Green Room for Public Space, is the properties that are near any of these developments that go up to 4 stories based on these allowances are not going to like that those allowances are in there for that.
Sure.
Right? I mean, they
Like
will
the
not.
single family?
And right,
You're
but
talking about like the single families?
yes, correct. Any single family around one of these developments that goes from a 2 to a 4-story, especially based on affordable housing, is not going to be in the people in the best interest, or not. They're just, I mean, we saw it with the other developments. You
Yeah,
know?
I mean, and I think it
So-
depends how close it is, right? If you have a large
For
parking
sure,
lot in
for
between.
sure.
I mean,
can I point one thing out before you guys continue? So there was a super timely article, and I was going to mention this later, and I forget which issue, but one of the two issues, it talks about just what you're talking about. If everyone could read this at some point, it's just one page. I pulled it out, and I did send it to council because it talks about that, and it talks about how the engagement that you want with your community happens during the time that you do the master plan, and as we're doing the zoning ordinance now, and the community as a whole speaks and tells you what they want to see. And the community was engaged in our master plan processes for sure. I feel like they really maybe haven't been as interested in the zoning ordinance.
They're
but
not stuck at home with COVID.
no. During the master plan, we got a ton of survey responses, a lot of attendance at our public engagement opportunities. And they talked about being okay with going to 4 stories, for example, in select areas, which is what we're taking here. Now, I don't know that affordable housing really shined through in those processes as much because they were a couple years ago, and I feel like it's more of a hot topic now. But we are taking the part where they said we're okay with going to 4 stories when you take into account appropriate setbacks and things like that. And then what we're hearing now from maybe not all of you, but some of Council and Planning Commission is affordable housing is important to us. So can we take the 4 stories the community said they'd be okay with in some instances and tie it to something else we think is important too? And then when you come and have those single family residences that are nearby, come for that special hearing and say, but I don't want it next to my house. This article really talks about sometimes it's important to talk about the whole vision of the community and try to mitigate those instances where it impacts individual residences where you can, but to still realize that the community as a whole said, but we want this. I won't mention this article again later since I talked about it now, but if you could all look at it, it really speaks to that.
And I believe in this, we've really buffered a lot of it with regulations now, right? Like, if you're going up 4 stories, right, this is what your landscaping needs to look like, and this is what your buffer needs to look like. And we had none of that before. We were just kind of like, yeah, we feel like it's enough.
I guess my thought, maybe just not the downtown area in terms of the affordable housing portion, or at least as an incentive of it. Like, it seems like the other corridors maybe would make a little more sense to me. But the downtown, I guess I wasn't as up on maybe as a few other council members or commissioners.
And the thought process, or why disclude the downtown?
We have a pretty small downtown, I think, as is. And it just seems like we need some more things. I don't know. Just try to get more people down there. Like you said, kind of the social district and stuff. You don't really have any places to go to.
So you
things
would
like that.
rather see it be like Plaza in order to go up 4? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I would. Yeah. Or at least something like to that nature. Not necessarily having the people or people living downtown right on those couple corridors, Coolidge and 12 Mile, but being able to have more activity, I guess, within it.
So are you thinking not at all on 12 Mile and on Coolidge, or, cause like this is that downtown core.
Yeah.
Or are you thinking just that?
No, I think I was thinking more of the downtown core.
Okay.
Yeah, like the half blocks on both. I always forget what's the 12 Mile Coolidge to what?
Not
Tyler.
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 Buckingham.
Yeah.
Buckingham, yeah. And then down to Catalpa, right?
Yeah.
That's just my thought. I don't mind the other areas.
I'm just one voice. you brought it up. So, and I think at the workshop, we voted on it or something at one point, so.
And then a lot of my other stuff is just stuff I can send in a comment, right? It's just this little like, hey, we don't say that we can't back up from a parking spot over a sidewalk. Can we put that somewhere?
Okay.
So that stuff I can just send. I don't
Wait,
think
say
it's.
it again?
So in our current ordinance, you're not allowed to back out of a parking space over the sidewalk in a parking lot.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't see it in this one, huh?
Use the driveway, yeah.
What about parking your car on your driveway, but also on a sidewalk?
Like over the sidewalk?
Yeah.
So that's a city code thing.
Okay.
We wouldn't address it in this document.
Park on the street now.
I have issues with that.
Now that we're not in a stroller anymore, I can navigate a lot better, but there were a lot of swear words out of my mouth when I was strolling.
Yeah,
on
I
the
am
block.
Somebody
right
that's
now,
disabled,
and
you
it
know.
is. It's very frustrating.
You should call public safety about that.
Oh, you're still
No,
more.
do you have something to say?
Yeah, so I was kind of looking up, and I wasn't sure. This is more of a newer thing that I thought about, but bicycle parking, like bicycle racks and stuff. Because I saw in here, looks like section 14, so page 290, bicycle parking, but then it's like one hoop for every 20 parking spaces. Like, I don't know, I was thinking more on like, kind of like, you know, trying to promote more biking, or hey, I have a bike, I want to go somewhere downtown or go to a business or a store. Like, there's not a lot of spaces, I think, or spots to like lock up your bike and like hang out for a long time without, you know, tying it to a lamppost or tying it to a street sign, which, you know, probably don't really want things attached to, you know, the public infrastructure. But, so I didn't know if that was something.
So the DDA has, in the past 2 years, added a lot of bike racks throughout.
Is there
Yeah.
like on
On Coolidge and 12 Mile.
12 Mile?
Yeah.
City building, Chisano's has one now.
Yeah.
Uh,
So these would be like
Bombers.
above and beyond that and required, whereas before we were like, hey, we'll give you 2 parking spots if you.
Right. So instead of like one per 20 spots, because I think a lot of these probably businesses or spots.
Or
wouldn't
portion
have-
thereof.
What?
Or portion thereof. So if they only have 2 spots, they still need one bike rack. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know if it.
Like
I
you
guess
want
it-
like 2 for
Yeah,
for
right,
10
right,
or
yeah,
something,
like 2
or
per,
1 for
2
10.
minimum or something. Yeah.
I feel like what you're describing would be best solved by making changes to existing uses, unfortunately, which the zoning ordinance can't really do because they're already established.
Right.
So,
No, understand.
I definitely get the frustration there, but this, yeah, it'll only come into play when there's new development anyway.
Yeah.
Which we could change the number, absolutely, but I don't know if it'll resolve the issue you're pointing out.
Sure. No, I understand that. That makes sense. Okay. What was that?
The deviations from the design standards looks pretty easy. It's like, can you prove that isn't harmful to ignore them? Kind of is how that reads. And I mean, of course, it's not going to be harmful to ignore them. I just feel like we need to make it verbally harder to deviate from the standards because we want them to do the standards. I don't have a page that I wrote down for that either. Clearly, I was just
I see
typing
it, 135.
Oh, look at you.
Are you just searching up keywords? Is that how you find
Deviations, yeah. Yeah, so those are trying to reflect the special land use standards.
Like, I want to be able to have some flexibility knowing, but I also want to be kind of hard about it.
Sure.
And it might just be me, but I feel like this is very easy. Like, it's not going to harm anybody if I
Right.
don't do it. It's not going to adversely impact essential public services, and it can still meet zoning. I don't know. If there's a way we can make that a little bit harder.
Yeah, that seems more oriented than design oriented. Okay, that's a good point.
And then I think the last thing is like a review of the PUD process in this. So somebody comes and they meet with the city, maybe meet with the neighbors, and then they have their concept, right? What they're coming to us with at that point is like a sketch plan? Is that how this works now?
After they meet with the neighbors?
After they meet with the neighbors in the city, when they're coming to us for that first process.
So you're talking about step 1, preliminary development plan approval.
I think so. What page are we?
Page, let me see. 141 of the PDF.
Yes.
You're talking about conceptual plan with the planning commission. So they have the option to present like a sketch plan to you all. And you can say, oh, I love it, I hate it, change this, change that. Is that the step you're talking about?
I guess I'm trying to re-understand the difference in processes, right?
For that summary of the approval process, they need a site plan. It's a sketch plan won't do.
Even for that
portion.
first step.
Which,
So this is for that approval process. The optional
Yeah.
pre-app meeting isn't summarized in that part, but perhaps it should be included at the beginning.
it is in page 142. So there's a couple steps. Step 1 is they meet with staff and present like a sketch plan. We say, this is crazy or this is great or whatever it happens to be. And then they meet with the neighbors as an optional meeting too, and they get feedback from the neighbors. And then they could come to you guys and say, and we want feedback from you too. Understanding you're not taking any action, you're not beholden to your comments. We just want to come before you and see what you think. And that's an optional step for them. And then if they collect their comments and all of that, then they would refine their plans further. So then when they come back to you for actual approval, it's not a sketch plan. It's
Okay.
like a plan.
Even in that step 1, preliminary no,
So
that's the
way
final
it's-
development plan?
Yeah, so the way this is written is 7.05 is like a broad summary, splitting it into 2 steps. And then 7.06 goes into further detail about what step 1 is, which includes the pre-app and the neighbor meetings and all that. And the next section goes over in detail what step 2 is. So, as we were writing this, I was like, this feels like a lot. I think administratively, though, it'll actually make it easier when it comes time for the applicant to have a conversation with Kristen, right?
Yes.
So by the time it gets to us and we're taking action on it, we have a site
Yes.
plan. We
Yes.
know every
Yes.
deviation. We don't need to know every single itty bitty flower, but we know what area is going to be
Right.
landscaped.
That
More
is-
work is
yes.
done on the admin end at the beginning in this process than is now. So
Yep.
you will see more complete plans with this new process,
Okay.
theoretically. This is all theoretical.
It should work that way.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that's the only thing I feel like I needed to discuss. Sorry, I had so much stuff.
That's really helpful.
No, this is a super helpful.
Oh, I do have one more thing. Sorry.
Too late.
No design standard, we don't have any design standards for multifamily housing. We had some for duplexes, we have it for not residential buildings, I think, but I didn't see anything for multifamily.
Right.
We'll check on
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I think that has more to do with the fact that it is restricted placement-wise in the city to more of a degree than duplexes, and so we didn't come up with design standards because we thought by virtue of the fact that the multifamily districts are so small and in a lot of cases already developed, and then the site design-based districts have those site design-based standards to rely on. That's why we didn't develop any.
It would just be adding then standards for districts only
Yeah.
zoned multiple families.
Those two,
Right,
yeah.
so that's what I was looking at, like, so my street, right, the first I don't know how many. There's a lot of houses still, but there's, you know, they're zoned multifamily. They don't fall under one of those other districts where the site design or where, you know, where we would
Yeah.
have design guidelines. So is our intention to not have design guidelines? Because listen, there's one across from me that we call the warehouse. It is a square, right? There's a couple windows. It is all dark. I mean, there is nothing attractive about it at all. Sorry, I'm sure you're not watching. You know. So I would like to avoid warehouses.
Absolutely appreciate that. Yeah, and setbacks simply will not do that.
Right. All right, now I'm really done.
Yeah, we can look at trends, yeah.
So if anyone comes across anything else, send your comments to me by November 8th. And if there's typos and other things, too.
Does anybody have any other comments or thoughts or worries? Read through it. Don't read through it for typos, but read through it for like, how is this going to apply when I'm up here? This is like, this is our document.
Especially the processes.
All right, if there's nothing else, is there anything else you all would like to say, do, talk about?
Did you play with the interactive map? Pretty cool, right?
I do have one more thing on the zoning map. We have two things that are brown. Can we just change one to blue because they look kind of similar on a computer screen?
Is there no blue?
There's two blues in there. Is it dark
Oh,
blue
there
and
is,
light
yeah.
blue?
So a different color.
I don't see a blue. I see a periwinkle and a lavender.
You know, we'll have screens at the Berkley tabling that we're doing, and I anticipate that we're gonna get a lot of comments about colors, which is very helpful, especially when people are colorblind. So these color comments are please send them.
The gateway corridor is a bright blue. Would you agree? On 12 Mile? Periwinkle.
Yeah,
I know,
like
I'm like,
sky,
am I on an old
baby
Am I on an old map now?
I'm seeing the gateway corridor as red.
Yeah,
But
I'm
then I
seeing it
was
as
like,
red too.
maybe-
Oh, that's the old version, yeah.
The
newer
old
one
version is
with
red?
less filled in.
All right, let me see.
Did I send out the wrong one?
Did you look at the interactive map?
Oh, I
Wait, are
did
they
not look
looking
at the
You sent
interactive
out
map.
the map.
This is the
map.
PDF
Yeah,
that
the
I sent
PDF.
out.
You're looking at the interactive.
Yeah, I'm looking
So
at
it's
interactive.
Oh.
two different maps.
Yeah, yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
yeah, right there.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
So they're all looking
So we'll
at
need
They
to
did
make
have
sure those match.
Oh, most definitely, yeah.
So that's why.
Yeah.
And then there's like a
Okay.
slider bar.
But yeah, the interactive.
And
one
if you
is-
click on the parcel, you get more information.
Gotcha.
Oh my God, what? Oh, there we go.
It works. I tested it.
Yeah.
and cool.
What's that?
I said and cooler.
Yeah.
All right. All right, so interactive map is really cool. Everybody at home, play with it. Come to the Monster Mash, play with it some more.
And it'll be on the website tomorrow, the interactive map.
It'll be on the website tomorrow.
Exclusive launch announcement. At the
dropping
planning
the map.
commission. Wow. We scooped them. Take that, city council.
Anything else?
That's all from me. Thank you so much for this
We will
discussion.
see somebody, is it you that we'll see on Saturday, or?
Will see me, yes.
Very cool.
And me and Kim.
And you and who? And Kim?
Kim. Yep.
Very cool.
For the entire duration of the.
The entire duration of the Monster Mash party.
Oh, wow.
Are you
All right.
handing out big king size bars?
No, we're gonna do stickers.
We're gonna do stickers.
Costume?
And there'll be, oh yeah, I am a big fan of costumes. I will always encourage a costume, so
Just
I'm just gonna
saying.
put that
Okay,
out
yeah,
there.
we did. Megan did
Come as a map,
suggest that
maybe,
we,
come as the.
An
zoning
interactive map.
exactly
That's
what
really
Megan
Maybe
said.
not an interactive map.
Yeah, we don't want to interact that much.
Fair enough.
I like the energy.
All right, are there any liaison reports?
Yeah, so we just had the Southeast Oakland safety action plan, like committee meeting, on Monday, to go over some of the, kind of project list results. There will be sorry, I'm pulling up the date here and location. I believe the third public meeting.
21st.
The 21st of November, 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. at the Madison Heights Active Adult Center on 13 Mile Road. It is a drop-in, so if anyone wants to go, you can just drop in and discuss any other safe streets for all type things.
Traffic safety.
Traffic
We
safety,
should
yes, let me
clarify that.
clarify,
Some
yes.
people are there for like public safety.
Yes, we did have one person there for,
Different.
yes, public safety. And that
Different
was
issues.
The
for
other-
traffic safety.
The other
so.
two that you guys had were a while ago, right? Towards the beginning of the summer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Was this to get more input, or was it that more people were interested? Do you know, like,
To get more
why?
input.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're spreading them out amongst the
Yeah,
communities.
yeah.
So, because like it goes from Madison Heights all the way to
Mhm.
us over here, so that's a big east-west spread.
Gotcha.
So,
Yes. Yep. And I don't know, Kristen, if you were on that one.
I was out sick yesterday, so I was not on that meeting.
Okay. Wasn't sure. So, interestingly enough, I think Coolidge was on it.
Coolidge, Catalpa.
And
There's a
Catalpa?
couple. Yeah, there's a couple streets
Yeah,
that have high
yeah,
injury network.
which were noted higher. So,
Yeah.
Since road diet or before road diet?
since.
Sense.
Yep.
Yeah, the
This is
data
more
is
with
from
recent,
earlier.
yeah, crash data. So, and there's some other factors that play into it. Land zone use, right? I think we were looking at it there by the schools, that kind of stuff. So, and then, yeah, we'll tie into that. I think we're coming up soon to the end of this. I think, pretty
Mhm.
sure, yeah. Which then will get presented to. I don't know. I think you're gonna.
Yeah, it's gonna
Council
have to go to
percent.
council for a resolution supporting the plan, and then after that, the next step would be to take the recommendations and find grant funding to implement them, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So, and I think the resolution is more from is it Vision Zero, I believe?
Mm-hmm,
this
Vision
one?
Zero, yep.
Yeah. Versus Towards Zero Deaths. There's a couple different ones, but, yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Anybody else?
No, I did not go to chamber.
The DDA meeting last was mostly about discussing their strategic plan and how much they want to alter it, and if they need to get like another firm to come in there to tweak it. So there was a lot of discussion on that.
Last night at council, we formed an ad hoc committee to kind of look at all of our boards and commissions, so I'll probably be reaching out, I'm on it, with Councilmember Baker and Mayor Pro Tem Gavin to reassess our boards' visions, missions, policies, procedures, rules, and guidelines, so from all of our boards and see where that's going, kind of collaborate everything. And then we also approved our new city manager's contract, Crystal Van Vleck. She'll start on December 2nd, will be her first day, so we're excited about that. And then we awarded for HRC to start looking at Bacon Avenue for a water main in reconstruction project, a huge project they're gonna do. Spring of '25, but HRC will start drawing all that stuff up, so that's pretty much it, I think.
There you go.
Beautification Committee meets tomorrow night at 6:30 if anybody's interested, and we're also doing a Friends Park, which is on Harvard cleanup, 9 a.m. on Sunday. If you're available and want to help, bring a shovel. Dirty clothes. It's fun.
Good luck.
I've got nothing to report.
All right. I will just now put in my very last moment of a plug for Monster Mash and trick-or-treating this Saturday in our downtown. Trick-or-treating is 12 to 3, and Coolidge will be closed from Catalpa to 12 Mile early in the mornings. Don't leave your car out there. And then the Monster Mash party will start at 2 and end at 5. So come dressed up and ready to have fun. And with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned at 8:25.